Family comes in all shapes and forms. Some are big, some are small, some are concentrated in one location, and others are spread all over the place. I myself am an only child, and while I haven't ever experienced direct negativity for not having siblings, that doesn't mean I haven't struggled because of it. Hi, I'm Grimmy, and today I want to talk about my experiences as an only child. I will also be bringing in some input from friends of mine who have siblings in the second half of the video, so I hope you enjoy this chill discussion video. Growing up, I was always surrounded by adults. My parents, my grandparents, and even my great-grandparents. While I loved my adult family, I remember often asking for a little brother or sister when I was little. Even though I went to school like everybody else, I still felt the need to have another child at home. There came a point where I was homeschooled for a little bit, which at the time was the right thing for me. When I first started homeschooling, it was with another family, so I didn't feel isolated because I was still around other kids. However, when we eventually moved countries, I soon felt that I was missing out on being around children my age, since it was just my mum and I for most of the day. But other than that, I've never had any direct criticisms for being an only child. Now, who on earth would criticize anyone for being an only child? Well, when my family lived in France, there were certain circles that blatantly criticized my mother for not having more children. It's not like my parents didn't try, and it's not like they didn't want more children. In fact, they would have loved to give me a sibling. However, my mother had me at 40, which that in itself was kind of a big deal.
There were families who had many children who were telling me things like, don't play so much with your daughter, don't live in symbiosis with your daughter, don't allow her to come in and out of your bed. Because if you have more children, you can't do that. As if it was a wrong thing to do. And I always used to say, first of all, I'm a woman from the East, I'm German, I'm not French. Secondly, I have one daughter, and one child needs different type of life together than when you have many, and you organize things differently. With a child that is alone, you have to do many more things, because when you have many children, there are certain dynamics that happen between the children, and like you say yourself, you didn't have another child in the house, so we had to invite, organize and do things, which we did, and we visited many people and so forth, and they were kind of trying to make me feel bad about doing lots of things with you, because if I had more, it couldn't be done. I'm not sure why. Maybe they felt bad because they didn't spend a lot of time with their children, but wanted the grown-up to have their own life. And think when we sort of say l'enfant roi, in French, it's child king, meaning you automatically have a spoiled brat just because you look after it and you spend time with it. And I believe the opposite. I think the more time you spend with your child, be it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or more, and you give your life. You know that when you have a child, this is the most important thing, and the baby comes first. But that, I think, is a basic problem that is masked maybe in the comment about an only child, but just a basic problem. Sometimes when people have children, they think, I want to have my life, and the child has to adapt. And I think we stop our lives and we make sure that the new lives grow well. And they try to make to sort of had a problem with having one child and having a great time together, and being parent, being also friends. And that, I think, is really very vital in our case, because that's just what, A, I believe in it, and B, trust basis is based on trust. And I always trusted you, and I know that you could also trust me as much as we can humanly. So it was this fact of saying, don't spend too much time with your child and don't live her life or let her live with you as much, but put her away, organize her, put her into holiday camps, live your life. And I said, no, we do life together, because that's how it works with us. And voilà. So that's one aspect, one element that I lived.
Now, thankfully, I never had any of those things happen to me directly. Trust me when I say I was very vocal and opinionated when I was little, and would have straight up told those adults to mind their own business. But it's the little things in life that really set me apart from other people in my life. Both my parents have siblings. My dad has a sister, who has 3 children, and my mother has 6 younger siblings, all of which have about 2 to 6 children each. Basically, I'm the middle cousin of almost 30 first cousins, and they are all very different people. None of any of my cousins' families are completely the same. They live in different countries, have different routines and norms, children of different ages, but one thing they all do is go about as a group. What I mean is, if we're going on holiday, everybody goes to the beach or everybody stays at home. Everybody does what everybody else does. And that's not wrong by any means. This seems to be quite normal in big family groups. That's where being an only child sets me as different. If I don't want to go with a group because I'd rather go to the park instead of the beach, or I'd rather stay home and draw, I just will. I have an independence that is different to that of people that come from big families. I am more than happy and able to just do things on my own. I went to India for 4 months on my own. I moved towns on my own. I've traveled on my own even at a young age. I've taken walks on my own even when I was a child. I just enjoy my own company. That doesn't mean I prefer to be on my own all the time though, or that I don't enjoy people's company. It's just that I am able to do things on my own. I often see people saying things like, oh, going to the restaurant cinema on my own is so depressing, but unless you don't like your own company or get lonely easily, what is so depressing about that? I completely understand why that might be in theory, but in practice, I have never felt lonely doing things on my own. And that has put me in some interesting situations. One such situation was when I went to India to volunteer for my gap year. About 2 months in, 2 of my cousins decided to join me. Around New Year's, my cousins had been invited to a party in a different part of India, which would require some long flights. I just didn't feel like it. I didn't know the people at the party, I wasn't even invited by those people, I didn't know the people that invited my cousins, I didn't have an outfit for the party, and I just wanted to stay where I was and chill for New Year's with the other volunteers. One of my cousins said I should come to the party, and I said I wouldn't. Thank you for the offer, but I want to stay where I am. She became rather insistent, kept pushing me to join her and my other cousin, even though I kept saying I didn't want to go. It came to the point that she was being so pushy that I was getting upset that she wasn't respecting my choice. Thankfully, my other cousin intervened and the subject was dropped. They went to the party and I stayed where I was. I do not regret that, and I had a lovely New Year's. Sometime later, my mom told me that the reason why my cousin had been so pushy about me going to the party was because she thought I was being shy and didn't want me to be lonely, because that's how she personally felt. I love my cousin. She's great and absolutely lovely, and it was so sweet of her to look out for me like that. But hun, I went to India completely on my own and was alone for 2 months for strangers until you two joined. I am neither shy nor lonely. But isn't that interesting? My cousin, who has several siblings, thought I was lonely, and me, who is a single child, was getting upset that my choice wasn't respected. There was a lack of communication. I have many situations like that, where I decided to just do something on my own and people thought I was being shy or insecure or antisocial or something like that. For example, when my school organized a caving outing and I was the only girl who went because it sounded fun. So it was just me and all the boys, and it was super fun. I take my own initiative. I know what I like, what I want, and what I want to do. I like my own space, and I try to respect others' space and privacy, and I expect the same respect towards me. My things are my things, and your things are your things. Please don't touch my stuff. I think that's often called out by others as spoiled. The spoiled only child trope is common, to the point that a lot of people seem to think that just because you're a single child means that you are by default spoiled, which I think is completely unfair. Does that mean there aren't any spoiled single children? No, of course there are. But you can equally as well have the spoiled children in a big family. The golden child, the favorite child, the babied youngest child, all those tropes exist too. But there really seems to be a stigma against only children, just because, I don't know, we like our space, our privacy. I remember one time in class, we were doing some work that required pencils, and the girl next to me, who has several siblings, just went to grab my rubber, or eraser in American, out of my pencil case without asking me. To me, that was incredibly rude. So I grabbed my rubber away from her and told her to ask for permission to use my property. And she seemed shocked that I did that. She asked and I let her use it. And I remember her saying, paraphrasing of course, if you're going to say yes anyway, why didn't you let me at first? And for me, it was just because you didn't respect my property. I know that in some households with a lot of kids, everything belongs to everyone and everybody's sort of on top of each other and uses each other's things, all the time. But for me, that's just not a thing. My parents and I have always asked if we can use each other's stuff. There's always been very open communication between us like that. I am more than willing to share, you just have to ask first. It's not about not being able to share or not wanting to share. I also just think that my relationship with my parents is quite different to those who have siblings. My parents are definitely my best friends. I can talk to them about pretty much anything and everything. But when I talked to one of my friends about that, he said, "You wouldn't talk about your love life though, would you?" And I said, "Yes, I would actually. At least I would to my mum." And I have. Not that there's much to say about my love life, it's quite non-existent. But my friend sounded really confused at that. I have always had a very open dialogue with my parents, in a way I don't even think other only children have had. You often hear about single children having overbearing parents, or parents that put extreme expectations on them. And that can happen in a family with several kids too. But my parents have always given me the respect and space to be my own person and have helped me guide me through life. Early in the video, I said that it seemed to be quite normal in big families to do things as a group. However, just as with single children, I don't want to generalize families that have with several children. So I asked some of my friends what it's like with their own families. Each of them have siblings ranging from different ages. I just wanted to include some of what they told me. Obviously, I've asked for their permission, they've given me their permission, and all of them are artists. Their links will be in the description, so if you want to check them out. My friend Nia said, "I wish my sister was older. She's 7, so I could have a chat and do things together. But since she's so young, I haven't seen much of her because I've moved out quite early on from my mum's." My friend Jordan said, "Me and my brother mostly do stuff by ourselves, though when we do hang out, we gel quite well, usually because it's doing something we both like. For example, watching a movie we like together or something like that. Or we hang out together out of circumstance, like if we're in holiday and there's no one else to hang out with, so we have to spend time together, and for the most part, that's fun. Otherwise, we usually just keep to ourselves and just sort of inhabit the same space. In the rare circumstances he wants it, he has come to me for advice, which is nice. Feels like a moment where I'm really the big brother getting to help. Also, just saying the age gap between us is about 6 years, because I reckon there might be a difference between how much siblings hang out together based on age gaps." My friend Callum said, "As I live by myself, it's often by myself. Families will visit now and then, but I don't really connect with the rest of my family outside of my brothers and one of my sisters who's a bit of a tomboy. I always avoided them when I lived with them and happily played at my computer. Again, having more in common with my brothers. At most, we got together for Christmas, birthdays, Easter, and whenever we went to visit my grandparents." My friend Emily said, "I think my siblings and I often hang out together when I'm home. When I'm away, Jamie and I play games almost every day, but Charlie and I mostly talk weekly or have passing interactions, mostly because they are a bit more reserved. But when we do hang out, we get along well, and we have all forged a D&D gang together involving my boyfriend and my friends. I did do stuff on my own a lot too, but I think I hanged out with them more and more as I got older rather than when I was younger." I also invited Emily to sort of have a chat with me and a sort of Q&A between, somebody who has siblings and somebody who doesn't have siblings. So the next section is going to be me asking Emily a bunch of questions and basically just having some discussion topics to just sort of not debate necessarily, but just sort of chat about like different areas of, what it's like having siblings and, what it's like being an only child and how we perceive each other based on that. But anybody who doesn't know, Emily's a IRL friend of mine. We lived together for basically 3 years.
Much to the fortune of me and misfortune of you.
It's been an experience for sure. How many siblings do you have?
I have a total of 2 siblings. One of them is known partly in Clara's community. The other one is a bit more obscure in comparison.
He did try to usurp my Discord one time.
Yeah, he did kind of try to do some kind of English invasion.
You and your siblings tried to take over our Discord, and it failed really quickly.
One of them's trying to steal your heart, and the other one is trying to steal your server.
You're the oldest of your siblings.
Unfortunately.
Do you think, depending on when the sibling is born, you're treated differently? Like, is the oldest treated differently to the youngest?
I think that's mostly down to the parents' experience with children. But in the case of my parents, I feel like it was more, as we had more kids, they got more, a little bit more relaxed, I'd say, personally. Because Jamie got away with a lot more than I did, for example. But I didn't want to do anything too crazy, so again, it was kind of more of a base on both the character of the child itself and then the parenting of the parent. Jamie and Charlie did do a lot of crazy things in comparison to me.
Based on that, do you think parents do that consciously, or it's just like it just happens?
It's a natural part of learning to take care of a child, honestly. I think there's a reason that the oldest being the more motherly or fatherly, I guess, in some circumstances, and the youngest being the more like carefree one that gets away with everything. There's a reason that's stereotyped, I think, because it literally is everywhere. The relationship between siblings is a very specific formula of how it happens.
You're kind of forced to be in a house together. You didn't get a say.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you're going to get along whether you like it or not.
I think as they get older, it gets a bit easier to get along because your character development is happening.
We're not going to talk about your character development.
Not today, no.
What would you say is the biggest struggles about having siblings, in your opinion? Depending
on age, I think that's a big factor, because I think like when you're younger, it's probably more personal space as well as teenagehood, because you're all going to want to interact at different times depending on what you're doing, especially if you're all years apart and you go to different timed schools. I think me and my brother, for example, a lot of the time it was quite easy for us to get along, just me and him. Same with me and Charlie as well. But it was more in the case of like when we're all together, it gets a bit like kind of like an insult match in a way. Especially nowadays, but I think it's taken more as a joke now. But back then, I used to take it a lot more seriously. But I think that's partly due to just the way that my brain works, because I didn't realize they were making fun of me. They were just like, I thought they were being horrible to me. But that's not the case, I don't think.
Just banter. It's just banter.
Yeah, just sibling banter is very specific as well, I think.
Yeah. So would you say it's like personal space and learning as growing up how you work together? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in a way, when I was younger, I think young me had it in their head that because of the way that I was told certain things, I believed I was like basically the achiever of the family. Now it's kind of been integrated into my personality a bit to try to overachieve things, and sometimes it doesn't quite go the way that I plan it to. But I get frustrated over work. That's also had a negative somewhat impact on my siblings when they were younger, because I feel like one of them didn't exactly get the attention they deserved, and the other one didn't get the attention they needed, because I was often the one being helped mostly. Because I guess I just had more questions. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember you described yourself as like a little diva.
Oh yeah, I was a little loser baby bitch. I was a horrible child. I used to, I have loads of video evidence of this, but when I was younger, I had like the most helium voice. It was the most annoying thing to listen to, and I hate it now. Like when I was younger, and I used to, if my dad was ever filming us, Jamie was probably playing with a house or something, I would still try and make it about me. I would just jump in front of the camera like, Daddy, please can you film me? I have something cool to show you, and then do like a partial flip. I would like jump on the sofa with my hands on it. I remember this moment very, very well in my head. We were all in the swimming pool as kids, and I don't remember what Charlie was doing exactly, but I was basically like, yelling at my dad's camera, being like, I'm the most important person here, look at me, I'm a star, I'm being filmed. And like, Jamie just... So my dad put the slide we had inside the pool, right? And my brother just goes down and kicks me into the side of the pool. And I hit my face directly into the side of the pool. It's an inflatable one, so it wasn't concrete or anything.
So what do you think of only children? Like, generalizing?
I think usually they are more well off in terms of money. I wouldn't say necessarily rich, but they are a lot more well off, considering if they chose to have more siblings, they would probably there'd be less Christmas presents for them, there'd be less food, they'd have to share. Sharing is really difficult when you have siblings.
Am I hearing some jealousy there?
I would not change my siblings for the world.
No.
If I could choose to be an only child, I would not.
No.
Personally, because I feel like the experiences I've had with them have changed me as a person. Not to say that being a only child is a worse experience. I think they're both individually very unique.
It would make you a different person if you had or didn't have siblings, for sure.
Oh yeah,
because it'd be a different life experience. Some things, like for example, if I had siblings, I would not have been able to do some of the things we do now. Things would have been very different. The children, and you're saying that you think that they get more time spent on them with the parents than if they had siblings. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I also think they probably would have more friends purely because they don't have siblings to work around as well. So if they wanted someone to come over for a sleepover, it would probably more likely be a yes. I think it's easier to plan stuff out as a single child compared to somebody who's really close to their siblings. So like if they have things planned anyway. Because I play a lot of games with my siblings, I have loads of Discord calls with them, I have a lot of... I involve them in a lot of my stuff. From my experience, there are single children that I've met that cannot take a joke.
Oh yeah, no, I was one of those.
Oh yeah, if you have loads of cousins, maybe that might replace the sibling aspect. But again, that's also another very specific chemistry.
Yeah, your opinion of before and after meeting me, has your opinion of only children changed? Because this video is about me, so I'm gonna make it about me because I'm an only child.
Yes, to an extent, you are well off. You're an only child. You can take jokes.
Somewhat.
You can throw jokes.
You would know.
I would know. But I think it's also a case of like, the only children that I've known up until now have been in the context of being in a school setting as well. You are completely different to somebody who I would imagine is an only child. But you do also have some of the aspects that I think are quite common.
And now we're going to move on to the discussion topics, rather. So with spoiled children, sometimes when people talk about only children, there's often that sort of like, oh, this stereotypical spoiled only child. But I think there's also a stereotype that, you know, the youngest child in a family tends to be the spoiled one. Do you think most younger children and single children tend to be more spoiled than other types of children?
It is true, but for different reasons.
Right.
Where a single child may be spoilt in both a affectionate to an extent and again, this is depending on the parents, but like a wealthier extent. I think younger children are spoilt in the sense that the parents now know what they're doing to an extent, depending on what's happened. They would probably get treated more like importantly in comparison to the other siblings purely because they're older. I think because they're more likely to take care of themselves. They are more likely to spend more time with the parents, spend more time being taken care of.
Because I guess in a way, you know, with the older children, they probably had the parents' attention more when they were little. Then the siblings came along, and then the middle child doesn't get as much alone time because there's the older sibling.
Yes.
And then there's a younger sibling. And then when the two older siblings sort of go off and do whatever they want, then the younger sibling gets to have the parents with themselves more.
I love them to pieces. I would literally die for both of them.
And yet you're all very different, but like clearly siblings. Like you're obviously siblings, but you're so different.
I think the way we interact truly shows that we are related. Like if you looked at us all on the street, you would assume we were friends. But I think if you fully interacted with us, you would be able to tell.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, because like all of you look very different as well.
Yeah.
But then
when
you like separately, but then we put you all together in a room and you're doing something you all enjoy, like playing video games or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, they're definitely siblings.
I feel like that kind of engagement, that constant engagement with somebody, is missing with an only child to an extent. So they probably have more friends in terms of that case. So that, or they would go out of their way to try and talk to people online more.
I see this a lot on like, you know, people like making like jokes online, which is where I think the sort of can't take a joke aspect of things comes in. On TikTok, for example, you have somebody making a joke about like, oh, you know, that one university student, you know, that one university roommate who's really like nitpicky and everything like that. And then the entire section is like, it's the only child, it's the only child, it's the only child. And I'm like, but what if they're not the only child? What about they just have a very specific family? Why are you assuming that's an only child? Maybe it is. Maybe it's just me being an only child and taking it personally. But it's a fact of like, oftentimes, like there is a stereotype, but sometimes it's like what people consider an only child attitude may not be an only child attitude, or like from my perspective, I'm not spoiled, but maybe me liking my personal space.
I think it's a case of like the quote unquote only child situation of that kind of person, like that archetype.
Yeah.
Of like wanting their own personal space. could very well be a sibling. I'm very introverted myself, but I think again that's more due to just who you are as a person.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think it can also be heightened by the idea that you don't want to be constantly harassed by siblings. When I was younger, I knew 2 only children that were homeschooled.
I was homeschooled
And
for a little bit.
Yeah, that to me seems a bit devastating.
It
Because I
depends
feel like-
how you deal with it. So I know a few people who are homeschooled, because I was homeschooled a bit myself. And some of them, the entire family is homeschooled. So you have all like 6 kids homeschooled. So so they live together and they do their way and they do whatever. But then you also have like the kids like me who are homeschooled, but then you have the other homeschooled families, and then you study together.
Yeah.
So when I was being homeschooled, I was homeschooled with another family, French family, and that was really fun. That was really nice. It was great. But then when I moved countries and I didn't have, homeschooling wasn't a thing in that country, not in the same way at least, it became really difficult because I was really, really bored. And I didn't want to be on my own with my mum the whole time. So I ended up going back to normal school because it was in the long term, it wasn't the right thing for me. But at the time, that was the only option because the school we went to sucked. And my parents were like, why is our child getting picked on for not knowing how to write in cursive? She's from England. What do you expect? If you're going to homeschool your child and your child is an only child, you should be like going out of your way to make sure they're being homeschooled with other children who are also homeschooled. Or at least make sure to have friends over, because if you just if you just basically isolate your child, that is awful for the child.
Whether siblings get along or not can be due to the parents.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because
definitely.
If you're pitting them against each other, they will either grow to be against you or grow to hate each other. And I think that's really upsetting to see.
Because that can happen. You can have like entire families of several kids that are all spoiled rotten. Like,
I don't think a single
really
child
difficult.
fully knows they're being spoiled.
Oh, no, never.
Until
It's not...
they mix with other people.
So basically, I think we can disagree on it. Like, it really depends on the parents.
Yeah, I think so.
How your child turns out. So
Because I think the parents are more of a like butterfly effect to the children. To an extent.
Definitely. I mean, they're meant. However the parents treat the children is how the child's going to end up.
My dad, he was offered a job. Yeah, I got offered a job at Disney to do set construction, but it would have been in America.
Oof.
And this was after my parents were divorced, so they were fully divorced. He was able to do basically anything he wanted, but he chose to stay because of me and my siblings, obviously, because he felt them having a father was more important. And I feel bad, but I also feel like at the end of the day, I shouldn't feel bad because it's his own decision to do that. You know,
he's a grown adult. If he decided to do that, he decided to do that. My dad, when I think it was just after I was born, he used to drive a motorbike. He had an accident. He didn't have it wasn't like an awful accident, but it did sort of. It's like that could have been a really bad accident, and he realized that the fact that it could have been, and if in the worst case scenario I could have been fatherless, you know, the meme aside, I could have been quite literally fatherless. He decided it wasn't worth it and sold his motorbike. So, you know, don't make fun of my father's decision. It's a very good decision. I appreciate not being fatherless.
I'm glad.
I get enough fatherless behaviors in my comment section. I don't need it from you as well.
Anyway, just we're gonna write down some future jokes. I have an interesting thing to bring up.
Okay.
And I encourage anyone in the comments to maybe say this as well, their experience with this. Do you think your parents being an only child affects you as an only child or sibling having person?
My mum. So we had many conversations like that where, because she was brought up with the eldest of 7 siblings, having to live with 6 siblings with their upbringing, and then there's me who's an only child in a different country altogether, different generation as well, with different everything. So for her, it's like there was a lot of understanding of why do I not do things like other people in the family do? The amount of times I've told my mum off for not taking a break is insane. And it's because she's so used to being the older, responsible child of like several siblings and being in charge and everything. The amount of times I've told her, just do something for yourself. Just do something for yourself. And she's just like, no, I can't. And it's like, the F you doing?
I think they were good at communicating to me that it's important to have a relationship with my siblings and my cousins.
I think it comes down to how the parents deal with it. Because obviously, I think what a lot of people forget generally is that the children are not clones of their parents. It's the parents' job to learn how to like handle or like have a relationship with that child that may have a very different personality to them, or be ridiculously similar to them and therefore be like a mirror to the parents, and that can be sometimes a bit difficult to deal with. When you're brought up a certain way, you're going to bring up your child that same way. If it's a good thing, it's a positive thing, that's good. But sometimes I think some parents do end up sort of continuing the cycle of abuse or projecting their trauma or like you said, living their life through the child. And I think the parents' personal experiences might accidentally leak onto the child and influence a child that way, but I think it is the parents' jobs to be self-aware and to affect their children and to not let their personal experiences negatively affect the child.
Something I remember my mum doing.
Oh no.
So when she used to smoke, she used to do it and look at me and be like, "Don't you ever do this? Don't you ever do this?"
We had this big pot of Nutella, and my mum, knowing what I was like, "Don't you take a small spoon and eat directly out of the Nutella pot." And I was like, "Okay, fine, I won't." Later that day, what do I find my mother doing? She was eating Nutella with a small spoon out of the pot, and I was like, "Mom!" And she was like, "Don't do what I'm doing. It's a weakness." And I was like, real audacity.
Oh my god! I do have one last perceptive piece of information I wish to share with you. The less siblings you have, the more children you want.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So you've told me many times you'd be happy to have quite a lot of kids to an extent.
As many as I can handle, yeah.
Yeah. I personally, so from me and my significant other Sam's perspective, being obviously in a relationship, we've discussed potentially having kids in the future. We've partially kind of agreed on maybe 2. But Sam comes from a family where he has 1 sibling. He wants 2 to 3. I come from a family with multiple siblings and family members with also multiple siblings. And I would rather have 1 to 2 children. Because I think, from my own experience, I think 3 for me would be overbearing.
Yeah.
But I think, again, that's just my personal preference. Obviously, I'm not saying it's the right answer. I do remember like a lot of people I know who have more siblings saying they'd rather not have any children than others who are an only child that say, "Oh, I'd love to have more kids." One of my cousins, they were very excited to have kids from a young age, and they were an only child for a really long time. I think that might play a big factor in how many children you have in the future. That was just a tiny bit of perspective, I think.
I have like 30 first cousins, and I think the average in the family is about 4 kids each.
Yeah.
So like they still have a lot of kids, but it's not as many as the previous generations who had like 7 each.
Yeah, maybe then it's a generational thing as well.
Maybe. But at the same time, the circumstances for me being an only child is that my mum had me at 40. So that in itself is also circumstances. And then my dad's sister, she is the youngest of 2 siblings, and she's got 3. I think it depends. This is sounding, maybe this is assumptions, and maybe this is like really harsh of me, but I think
it's fair to think about.
I think that when you are an only child, if you've been given that chance to do so, you are a lot more in touch with yourself, and so you've had a lot of alone time and me time to sort of self-reflect and everything like that. Generally speaking, and when you have a family with loads of kids, things are oftentimes you're always you need to help with the kids with your siblings, or you need to do this, or you have to go as a group to do something, or whatever. There's something always happening in a house that has more children, and I think that when that happens, you have less me time, and unless if you make it that you have me time, like, I don't know, you just go off on your own or something like that. But I think you're given less opportunity when you have a huge family to have me time, so you don't really become as much in touch with yourself as you would if you're an only child. Like you mentioned, like, you mentioned earlier of like, if you have loads of siblings, you typically are very like adept in one topic or one thing, because you tried out different things, but then you don't have the time to do anything else other than that one thing you're really good at.
Yeah, so I think it's very influenced to an extent.
Yeah.
By your surroundings.
So I think that having kids is a really big decision, but needs a certain amount of A, maturity, B, knowing yourself and your limits, and C, just generally feeling prepared. And I think that when you're an only child, like me personally, I knew I wanted kids since I could talk. Like my parents never said, oh, you're gonna grow up and you're gonna get married, blah blah blah. My parents weren't that type of people to do that. I just could start talking. I was like, I want children growing up. I just decided as 4-year-old, and that hasn't changed. If you haven't had a chance to do that, then I think wanting kids is less likely, because in a sense you're still not, I'm not saying you are a child yourself, but you're still in that state of a child who hasn't quite is still learning about themselves. And I think when you've been filled with constant noise your entire life, be it in your own head or from outside noise, you haven't had that chance to sit in silence and sort of, or just have a silent moment and be like, so why is it that I don't know, I really like turquoise, but purple pisses me off? I don't know. Let's say I never had that conversation, but that's an example. It's like, why is it that I'd rather pet a cat than, I don't know, hold a baby, stuff like that. Like, why? I think a lot of times when you've been growing up in a large family, you've sort of been just pushed things, be like, and this is what you're doing now. This is what you're doing now. But as an only child, you have that option to be like, I'm just gonna sit here, not do anything.
Yeah.
If you want.
I think it's interesting because it's like me and my siblings, as we got older, I think we became more individual. I think that's the case with everyone, really.
Yeah,
but
I think as you grow up, that happens.
But we grew quite close through common interests that we would randomly just go, oh, I watch them too. That's weird, because we live in completely different rooms. That kind of thing. Or like we found out through friends. So a lot of the time now, my friends that come over become friends with my siblings purely because they are both the most funny, witty people I know. I think it's important to introduce your siblings if they are the same age as you to your friends, because I think you can all sort of form a group together. I know of a YouTuber, obviously I can't speak from their personal experience as well, but he involves his brother in everything that he does. And they have some interesting discussions with their friends on a podcast. They've all known each other pretty much their whole life, but being brothers, they usually have opinions on stuff that are either completely different or very similar due to their upbringing, which kind of makes for an interesting dynamic with their friends as well.
Any closing thoughts, any final thoughts, or anything you want to leave with the comment section? Because we know the YouTube's comment section are lovely. So nice. So peaceful.
I'm going to say, hello comment section. Just to let you know, I am a woman. My voice may sound that of a man's, but it is not the case.
Any one of you, if I see any mean comments about Emily's voice, I will personally fight you.
I hope every one of you has a good day. Thank you for listening to me talk about my experiences.
And thank you for agreeing to do this. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Clara did not hold me hostage and to talk about this very incredibly interesting subject.
I went to Batman yesterday to see it with you. You owe me.
It was a very stressful situation, but that's a story for another time.
That's a story for another day. It was completely my fault. Based on everything in this video, I would just say that families are all very different. And for the most part, we just shouldn't assume things about people based off of their upbringing. And I think that applies to a lot of things, not just, how many siblings you have. I think me having siblings would have changed the person I am today. So while when I was younger, I would have loved to have siblings, I think that being an only child is part of what makes me me. And I think all my friends having siblings partially is what made them the people they are today. And I love them very dearly, so I wouldn't change them for the world. People kept criticizing my parents for having an only child because they thought I was going to turn out spoiled or whatever else. But in reality, the only reason I would turn out spoiled is if my parents actually spoiled me, which they didn't. They took care of me the best they could. If they had another child, they would have also taken care of them the best they could. But they didn't have another child, they had me. And I think I'm pretty cool. I think they've done a pretty good job with me, I'd say. I don't know if anybody else would agree, but I think so I'll take it. No matter if somebody has siblings or not, it's how their parents are that's gonna really matter in the long run. My parents did everything they could to make sure I wasn't isolated from other kids. But there are parents in this world that do isolate their kids. I don't really know what this video turned into. It was originally meant to just be like, my personal experiences as an only child, and then just sort of turn into a discussion about only children and siblings, which I guess is, can't be avoided, and it kind of falls under the same category. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys have siblings? How do you feel being in the family you are with siblings or only child or whatever else? I think everybody has their own experiences, and I don't know how you feel about it or how you view other people, other children. Are you jealous of other people having siblings or not having siblings? I'd love for you guys to have a discussion in the comment section. Respectfully, of course. Be polite to each other, please. But yeah, that was it. Tell me your thoughts on anything I talked about in the video. Give me suggestions for the next sort of discussion video if you have any things you want me to talk about. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, this sort of experimental video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Special thanks to my channel members: Melahai, Born of the Dark World, Katara Sirakusa, Eleanor, Katsui Kaz, Yumi Pup Love Leslie, Caleb Bell, Kunara Star, Hikaru Mitana, and Kristen Wilson.